They had the nerve to come to my mansion after 10 years of not talking to me. I opened the door, spoke in a calm voice, and watched as the color left their faces. I have to throw it away because my family monitors my man. There is a long post coming up. Please be nice. No swearing, no brand names, just the facts and the disaster that came after. If you've ever been treated like a cautionary tale by your family, and then watched those same people come back to you as soon as you succeed, you'll know why last Sunday morning changed everything. My Ring doorbell rang while I was in my garage building a custom motorcycle. 9 a.m. on Sunday and a large line of folks is on my front porch. At first, I thought it might be a religious group or something. But when I looked at the app, I got scared. 7 members of my family stood there like they owned the area. They hadn't said more than 2 words to me in 10 years. My grandma Patricia, my aunt Monica and Uncle Steve, my cousins Tyler and Brandon, and my older brother Jake were all there with a blonde woman I'd never seen before. I'm Derek, 35, and seeing these folks on my land was like finding rodents in your kitchen. For the record, my house isn't like all the other houses in the suburbs. I built it myself on 5 acres outside of Austin. It has a 4-car garage, a workshop, and enough land that I can't see my neighbors. The kind of place that cost me a lot of money but was worth every penny. My first thought was to disregard them. The same individuals who had left me out of family events for 10 years because I started my own construction business instead of following their safe corporate career path. But the way they were all hunched together and seemed nervous made me want to know more. The security cameras saw them pull up in 2 cars. Jake's old Honda Civic, which had seen better days, and what looked like a rental car that Uncle Steve was undoubtedly going to pay for in some way. They stood there for at least 5 minutes before ringing the bell, which was definitely a sign that they were getting ready. Through the app, I could see them whispering to each other. Grandmother Patricia kept adjusting her handbag as if she were getting ready for a fight. You need to know how we got here to appreciate why this visit was so amazing. I was always the odd one out because I grew up in a working-class family in Houston. Robert, my father, was in charge of shifts at a chemical facility. Linda, my mom, worked part-time at a dentist's office. They were nice individuals, but they only saw one way to be successful. Go to college, get a job in a big company, live in the suburbs, and retire with a pension. Their favorite child was my brother Jake. A's in all of his classes, captain of the football team, and a full scholarship to the University of Texas to study business. I was the child who pulled apart lawnmowers in the garage and made tree houses that looked like they came from a magazine. Jake was studying for tests, and I was learning how to weld from YouTube and making my own furniture in shop class. There was a huge change in how we were handled. It was time to celebrate when Jake handed home his report card. Dinner at his favorite restaurant and phone calls to family to brag about what he's done. The same thing always happened when I brought home something I made in wood shop, like a jewelry box for my mom's birthday that took me 3 weeks to get just right. That's sweet, do. Did you finish your math homework? We would go to Grandma Patricia's house for dinner every Sunday. She was the boss of that family, and her favorite thing to do was to compare all the grandkids to each other. Jake was always the one who made it. Tyler and Brandon, my cousins, were figuring out what they wanted to do with their lives. This meant messing around in community college. I was the creative one, which meant I would be disappointed in the future. The order of things was set early on and never changed. Jake sat next to Grandma Patricia at supper, where he could tell everyone about his school successes. Even when I was 16 or 17, I often found myself stuck between younger cousins at the kids' end of the table. Everyone in the extended family was obsessed with how they looked. Uncle Steve worked in middle management at an insurance company, and Aunt Monica married him. They acted like he was a business mogul. They lived in a nice house in the suburbs and drove cars they couldn't actually afford. But they acted like they were successful. They carefully choose what to publish on social media, including pictures of fancy dinners, vacations, and meek brags about getting promotions and raises. When I turned 17, the cracks started to emerge. Jake was starting his second year at UT, getting high marks, and dating someone our parents liked. At the same time, I was getting in problems at school. Not for anything horrible, just for skipping class to work construction jobs on the side. As a high school student, I worked on weekends and made more money than most adults in our family did in a month. It wasn't just pocket change that I was making. I was making between $800 and $1,000 a weekend doing frame, concrete pours, and final carpentry. I had saved up $15,000 by the time I graduated from high school, which was more than my parents had in their emergency fund. But they weren't proud. They were ashamed. My mom would swiftly change the subject or make up excuses about my helping out a family friend when neighbors asked about my weekend work. It felt like I told my parents I was joining a gang when I told them I wasn't going to college. The bouts were legendary. Dad said he would kick me out. Mom is crying and calling me selfish and ungrateful. But the family's response was far worse. Grandma Patricia cornered me by the grill pit at Jake's graduation party. Derek, this building period needs to end. You're making the family look bad. Jake has a real future ahead of him. You're just messing around with tools. That talk lasted 20 minutes, and she went on and on about how I was letting the family down. She talked about my cousin Michael, who went to community college and now works at a bank. She talked about family friends whose kids were working as teachers and nurses, which are also good jobs. She even said I was like the neighbor's son who had joined the military. At least that was a good job instead of hard work. That's when I realized I couldn't fit within their small box anymore. The next week, I moved out, got a job with Torres Construction, and started studying the company from the ground up. Jake was partying his way through his last 2 years of college, while I was learning everything there was to know about building. I rented a studio apartment above a garage from one of the guys on my crew. It wasn't much, just 400 square feet with a hot plate and a little fridge, but it was mine. I made the furniture myself, and I felt more at home there than I ever had in my childhood bedroom. It didn't take long for the family to show how they felt. They were really interested in Jake's internships and job possibilities when they got together as a family. When they talked to me, they asked courteous questions about my profession and told me to think about going back to school for something more stable. The contempt was always there, but it wasn't obvious. Uncle Steve would pat me on the shoulder and say things like, "Well, somebody's got to do the physical work, right?" Aunt Monica would ask whether I was still doing the construction thing, as if it were a pastime I would ultimately outgrow. Tyler and Brandon, my cousins, would joke that I was the family's muscle for hire. They were barely passing their community college classes. When I was 23, things got really bad. The family acted like Jake had won the lottery when he got a mid-level accounting job that paid $45,000 a year. At the same time, I just launched Rodriguez Construction with 2 guys from my crew, a $25,000 loan on my truck, and all of my savings. It wasn't only a thought that made me start my own business. I had worked at Torres Construction for 5 years, where I learned everything there is to know about bidding, managing projects, getting permits, and working with suppliers. My boss was getting me ready to take over, but I was too impatient to start my own business. It was scary those first few months. We were getting results, even though I had to do everything from accounting to cleaning up myself and sleep on invoices, hoping clients would pay on time. Our first big project was fixing up a bungalow from the 1920s, and pictures of the work we did started going around town. I made the big error of trying to share my success at Christmas dinner. I had recently gotten a contract for a custom home worth $380,000, which was my biggest project thus far. When I brought it up, hoping for some help from my family, the answer was harsh. "That's good, Derek. That's what Aunt Monica said," she said, hardly looking up from her phone. "But what happens when the building market goes down? Jake's job is safe." Uncle Steve agreed. "Kid, construction is a boom and bust business. You might want to think about acquiring your real estate license or anything else that is more reliable." What happened next was a lesson in how to give backhanded compliments and mock people who are worried. They asked me about my business plan, my insurance, and said I was being careless. Jake sat there smiling while everyone told him how smart he was for choosing that career. But Patricia, the grandmother, dealt the final blow. "Derek, it's good for now that you're acting like a contractor. But when are you going to get serious? Jake is already talking to Sarah about getting a house. You're still living in that flat and doing manual tasks like a worker. People said laborer in the same way they would say criminal. At that point, I knew that no matter how well I accomplished, these individuals would never respect what I did. There was a lot of irony. Jake's safe job paid less than what I was making working for someone else, and my new firm was on schedule to make $400,000 in its first year. That night, I departed early and didn't look back. Jake's engagement party was the last straw. At that point, my business was making $600,000 a year, and I was making approximately $180,000. I said I would help pay for things. The answer was, thanks, but we've got it covered. Maybe just bring a nice gift. At the party, I sat alongside family friends I'd never met before. Jake's college mates sat at the main family table, but when he gave his speech thanking everyone who had helped him, he included his boss, professors, and even friends from school. 8 minutes of thanks for everyone who had an impact on his life, and I wasn't worth a single word. At that point, I gave up. If they wanted to pretend I wasn't there, I would help them. The next 5 years were the most focused years of my life. Rodriguez Construction started with 3 individuals and a vehicle. Now, they have 20 full-time employees and tools worth more than most people's homes. I focused on high-end custom constructions and commercial projects, the kind where clients don't question about pricing since they know that quality costs money. I was making 6 figures a year by the time I was 28. But I kept it to myself, drove the same F-250 work truck, lived in a nice apartment, and put all my money back into the firm. The family had no idea what I was up to. When I ran into extended family around town, they'd inquire how the building was going in the same condescending way. Jake's dream of living in the suburbs was falling apart. People talked to each other in small groups. He had a lot of debt, including a hefty mortgage, auto bills, credit card debt, and a wife who liked nice things but didn't work. Around 2018, the real estate boom hit Austin hard, and everything changed for me. All of a sudden, every successful business leader wanted a custom house, and they all wanted the person who constructed them well without cutting shortcuts. I got 3 contracts valued more than $2 million in 6 months. These weren't normal endeavors. A tech founder's 6,000 square foot modern farmhouse, a historic downtown building turned into a home, and a specialized workshop for a rare automobile collector. Every assignment challenged my talents and helped me build relationships with clients who came back and told their friends about me. That's when I bought 5 acres in Hill Country and started making plans for my own home. Not to show off, but because I wanted to make something that will last. It took months to come up with the design. A classic look on the outside with all the modern comforts built to last for generations. Everything is professional grade, from the custom millwork to the imported tiling. It looked like a professional shop in the garage. The office looked out over the lake I built myself. On paper, I was worth millions by 2020. Rodriguez Construction was fully booked for 18 months. My workers made more money than most people who went to college. But to my family, I was still just Derek, the guy who worked in construction. I didn't mind being alone. I had made strong friendships with other business owners, craftsmen, and customers. Not family duty, but real relationships founded on respect for each other. We had each other's backs when my crew needed help. We rebuilt my electrician's basement for free after it flooded. I went out on dates but never got serious. Especially after seeing Jake's marriage fall apart when Sarah left him for a lawyer while his company was going through a tough time. There were greater things for me to do than play those games. People say that the best way to get back at someone is to live well. My family was stuck in their suburban bubble, where they thought success was based on looks and social standing. I was constructing something real. I wake up every morning on my own acreage in a house I designed and built, and I have work that will outlast me. And you know what? They didn't even know I was gone for 3 years. When CO hit, building was seen as necessary. So, even though everyone else was stuck at home, I was busier than ever. People who were stranded at home sought to make changes to their homes, add on, or build custom offices. I hired a second crew and started working on commercial projects for firms to adjust to the new situation. The epidemic gave me chances I never thought I'd have. Restaurants needed to quickly build outside sitting areas. Changes had to be made to office buildings to make room. Families that worked from home wanted separate offices, gyms, and places to have fun outside. My company changed direction faster than others because we were always ready to change. We could bid on a job on Monday and start work on Wednesday, whereas big construction companies were stuck in red tape and change orders. Customers were willing to pay a lot of money for that kind of response. By 2021, I was making several $1 million a year and bringing home a good amount of money. I got a new truck and some rental properties, and I started thinking about moving to Dallas and San Antonio. The investment properties were a smart choice. I bought rundown houses in good communities, fixed them up with my own teams during down times, and then either sold them or rented them out. It was a natural next step for me as a builder, and it gave me different ways to make money that didn't rely only on new construction projects. That was when Tyler's girlfriend noticed my truck at a petrol station and recognized me. She followed me on a social media site that I didn't use much, but it did have some pictures of my work. Then, family members started looking at my posts and seeing images of my house, my equipment, and the expensive projects I was working on. Most of the time, I used my account for business. Photos of the staff at work, before and after pictures of projects, and sometimes a picture of a finished place. But for someone who knew me, it was a clear sign of success. It was clear that the projects were high-end. There was no doubt about the quality of the work and the equipment was top of the line. All of a sudden, after years of not hearing from you, I started getting strange texts. Hey, Derek. I hope you're doing well. I saw your post on the mansion you built. It looks amazing. We should get together soon. The communications were clearly fraudulent. Tyler, who I hadn't talked to in 6 years, suddenly wanted to meet for coffee and catch up. Brandon sent me a friend request after not spoken to me since high school. It was odd that Aunt Monica started liking my business posts after years of warning people I was squandering my life. I didn't pay any attention to them. If they wanted to get back in touch with me because they found out I had money, it told me everything I needed to know about what they wanted, but I had no idea they were going to attack me. I proceeded to the front door, and the sound of my steel-toed boots on the floor echoed. The smile on their faces when I opened it was worth a lot. They were ready for the family failure they had been talking about for years. Instead, they received a 6 feet 2 inches guy who was in shape and wearing a nice flannel and jeans that fit. Hi, Derek. Grandmother Patricia spoke first. She tried to sound warm, but her voice came off as rigid. Wow, what a nice house you have. Yeah, well, hard work pays off, I said, not bothering to hide the edge in my voice. The stillness went on, like a dreadful first date. Finally, Aunt Monica stepped up with a fake smile on her face. We were in town for a reunion of the Johnson family. Do you remember the Johnsons? We figured we'd pop by because we heard you lived nearby. The way it was spoken casually almost made me giggle. For 10 years, these folks didn't care where I lived. And now they're acting like we were friends. Also, the Johnsons live 2 hours away, so this wasn't just a quick visit. I said, "How nice," in a bland voice. "You want to come in? Or do you want to talk on the porch?" They walked by me into the foyer, and I saw their eyes get big. High ceilings, unique ironwork, and original paintings on the walls. The works. The entrance alone probably cost more than what most people make in a year. Handmade iron chandelier, stone floors from another country with radiant heating, and a solid walnut staircase with hand-forged rails. Tyler, his cousin, couldn't help himself. "Wow, Derek, this location is amazing. How much did this cost you?" "More than you make in 3 years." I answered right away. I showed them everything because I wanted to see how they reacted. The living area has 20-foot ceilings and a stone fireplace that was made just for it. The kitchen has professional-grade appliances and a center island that is bigger than most people's bedrooms. The workplace was full of prizes and pictures from high-end projects. Tyler kept whistling softly. Brandon was taking images for his fiancée, which entailed recording everything so he could share them later. In her thoughts, Jake's new wife was figuring up how much property was worth. But what Grandmother Patricia said was the most important thing. She was thinking about all she thought she knew about me again. The grandson she had given up on as a failure was clearly doing better than anyone else in the family. And the truth comes out. We ended up in the living room with coffee and pastries, making small chat about the weather and their drive out. These were safe topics that kept us from talking about the elephant in the room. I gave them just enough information about the house and the business to help them comprehend how big the project was. The living room was made for having fun, and the seating area could fit 15 people comfortably. I mined the stone for the fireplace myself from the land, and the mantel was a single piece of mosquite that I had milled and completed by hand. The windows from the floor to the ceiling let in light and views of the lake and the beautiful surroundings. Aunt Monica cleared her throat at that point. The universal sign that we were getting to the real reason they were there. Derek, we've been thinking about family lately, and she started using that voice that made my skin crawl. Jake is having trouble with money because of the divorce settlement and legal bills. That was the setup. I kept my face neutral and waited for the pitch. Costs of legal work? I asked, pretending to be stupid. Jake looked uneasy, but Monica kept on. It has cost a lot to fight for custody of Sarah. You know how complicated these things can get, so she hired one of those high-end divorce lawyers. I knew how bad they might get since I'd been hearing about Jake's divorce from friends of ours for months. Sarah wasn't just taking half of everything. She was asking for alimony because she said she had given up her career to help him get ahead. It seemed like her lawyer didn't care that she had never had a job to give up. Uncle Steve jumped in. Derek, I've been looking into several investing prospects in the building industry. We could probably come up with something that would make money for the whole family with your skills and contacts. I have to give them credit for being creative. They were trying to make it sound like they were offering business prospects and family assistance instead of just begging for money, but I could see through it. Jake needed money, so they decided that his successful brother should give it to him. The investment potential perspective was especially rude. People who had never been interested in my business when it was suffering were now willing to work with me now that it was doing well. They wanted to escape the years of long days, financial risk, and getting to know their suppliers and clientele. Grandmother Patricia gave what she felt was the last argument. Derek, we miss having you at family events. We need to stop living in the past and start acting like a family again. After all, family looks out for each other. The nerve was astounding. They were finally ready to welcome me back into the family after treating me like an embarrassment for 10 years. I reclined back in my leather chair and looked at their faces as long as I had my checkbook with me. When I was trying to develop something from nothing, these folks had given up on me. Now that I had done better than they thought I would, they suddenly wanted to be family again. Time for the truth. That's intriguing, I responded in a calm voice. When was the last time I was invited to a family gathering? The quiet was loud. They all looked at each other, expecting that someone else would speak up. Finally, Monica said, well, you know how it is when you have a lot going on. No, I said. I don't know how it is. Tell me why not. More awkward quiet. They came here expecting to see the old Derek, the one who would do everything to fit in and needed their praise so badly. They were about to find out that that version of myself was from the past. Jake eventually spoke up. Derek, I realize we haven't been as close as we could have been. Almost? I cut in. No one in this room has called, texted, sent me a birthday card, or given me a Christmas gift in more than 8 years. You got married twice and didn't even inform me. Grandma told folks that I was a construction worker who would never be anything. And now you want to talk about being close. Their faces turned white. The comfy lie they had been telling themselves that we were both to blame for our separation was being broken by realities they couldn't dispute. Tyler sought to make peace. Hey dude, maybe we all should have done a better job of keeping in touch. Are you staying in touch? I stood up straight, and everyone had to look up at me. Let me teach you how to keep in touch. I called Dad to tell him about my first major contract when I started my business. What did he say? That's nice, kid. Jake has recently been made a senior accountant. I sent my parents images of the land I bought and the house I was building because I was pleased of what I had done. She showed them to people and said I was still using tools. The room was completely quiet. It looked like the clock in the corner had stopped ticking. I kept going after Jake got engaged for the first time. I offered to help pay for the wedding. Monica told me they had it under control, but thanks anyhow. At the reception, I was seated among individuals I didn't know, and Jake's buddies got the family table. He thanked everyone who had helped him succeed in his speech, including his teachers, his boss, and even his friends. He didn't thank his brother, who had offered to help. Jake gazed at his hands. "Derek, I'm not done," I responded, my voice rising stronger. 5 years ago, when Patricia's grandma had heart surgery, I drove to the hospital with flowers and promises to help pay for her medical bills. The nurse advised me that only close family could visit. Monica here advised the staff that I was merely a distant relative and that it would be better if I waited when I stated I was her grandchild. That event still hurt. After hearing about my grandmother's operation, I drove several hours to send her flowers and a letter with a check to help with costs. I was turned away like a stranger instead of being welcomed. The nurse was confused because I plainly knew things about my family, but Monica told me to wait until the immediate relatives had come. I had to wait 4 hours in the hospital cafeteria to see my own grandmother. She was drowsy and barely noticed me when I eventually got 5 minutes with her. I gave the check to Monica, but she never said if Grandma even knew about it. Grandmother Patricia's face was as white as a sheet. There was no way to spin what they did to me. It was all set out in front of me. I responded, "No," and sat back down. "We haven't been as close as we should have been. You cut me out of this family completely, and now that you found out I'm more successful than all of you put together, you want to be family again. That's not family. That's a deal." The gold digger displays her real colors. That's when Jake's wife, who had remained quiet, chose to speak up. "Look, Derek," she remarked, standing up with her chin up in the air. "I don't know what happened between you all in the past, and to be honest, I don't care. What I care about is that Jake has been having money problems since his divorce, and you obviously have more money than you know what to do with. Family helps family. Period." The room became silent. Even the other family members seemed uncomfortable with how direct she was, but she kept on. "I mean, look at this place." She pointed around the room. "It's clear that you're loaded. Your brother Jake needs help. You didn't do all of this work yourself. During the boom, you got lucky with certain construction projects. You should at least help out the family that reared you." I stared at her for a long time, trying to understand how rude what she had said was. I laughed after that. Not a polite chuckle, but a deep, real laugh that made everyone in the room move. "What's so funny?" she yelled, her face turning red. I said, "You are exactly what I expected." I wiped my eyes. Jake always had a type. Pretty, spoiled, and totally clueless about how the real world works. "Derek," Grandmother Patricia said sharply. I ignored her and focused on the blonde. "What's your name again?" "Brittany," she continued, raising her chin. "Brittany, tell me what you do for a living." She said, "I'm a social media influencer." Of course, she was. How many followers? 12,000 on one site and 8,000 on another. I nodded with a serious look on my face. "And how much money does that bring in each month?" She wasn't as sure of herself. "Well, it's getting bigger." "So, nothing. You don't make anything." I looked at Jake. "You divorced a gold digger and married another one, brother. That's either incredibly horrible luck or a bad decision." Jake's face turned red. "Don't treat my wife like that. Your wife just instructed me to give you my money because family supports family, while admitting she doesn't know or care about our past. She said that I was lucky to be successful and that I didn't earn it myself. But I'm the bad guy for saying that she's a social media influencer who doesn't make any money and is instructing me how to spend mine." Brittany put her arms across her chest. "If I had millions and my family needed help, what would you do?" I cut in. "You'd give it to folks who treated you like trash for 10 years. Brittany, how much money have you given Jake since you were married? That's not the same. What makes it different? You knew he had money troubles because of his divorce when you married him. What have you done to help fix those problems besides telling other people to pay?" There was a lot of stillness. She didn't have a response since there was none. But Brittany wasn't finished. Derek, do you know what your problem is? You are selfish. You have a lot of money, but instead of assisting your family, you're keeping it all to yourself. Jake told me you two were close when you were kids. Jake informed you that we used to be friends. I looked at my brother. Is that the story you've been telling people? That we grew up together but then grew apart? Jake wouldn't look me in the eye. When we were kids, Derek, we were close. We were never close, Jake. You were the perfect kid who did everything correctly. And I was the letdown who made the incorrect choice. That was how things were from the start. And you never did anything to fix it. You went along with everyone else treating me like I was less than you, even when we were kids. The numbers are true. I took out my phone and looked through my contacts. You told me that I was lucky to get building contracts. Brittany, let me show you what it means to be lucky. I opened the app for my bank and turned the screen toward them. This is the account for my business. The current balance is in the millions. That's only the checking account, not including property assets, investments, or retirement savings. They stared at the number on the screen with wide eyes. It cost me a lot to build this house. I paid in cash. The workshop includes equipment worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. The F-350 dually trucks outside cost a lot of money. When I'm done fixing up the old car, it will be worth 6 figures. And that's just the toys. I used a different app. My portfolio of investments is strong. I have a number of rental properties that are worth a lot of money. My business made millions of dollars last year, and I personally made a lot of money after taxes. It was really silent. They knew I was doing well, but seeing how big it was made them feel little. Brittany, when you say I got lucky, what you really mean is that I worked long hours for 15 years, created a reputation for quality that lets me charge high rates, and made smart financial choices. But let's just say it was luck. The last truth bomb. Jake was looking at his hands. I didn't know. Derek. What do you mean? That your sibling did well? That I had built something important while you were playing office politics and getting ripped off? For years, I attempted to tell you about how well I did. You just didn't hear me. I stepped back to the window to look out at my property. What do you think is the saddest part? I would have told all of this to family members who really cared about me. I had dreams of hosting family cookouts, having my nieces and nephews come stay for the summer, and being the successful uncle that helped with school costs when I built this home. I kept going after I turned back to face them. But for that to happen, my family had to see me as more than just a disappointment. Instead, I made friends with people who liked what I was doing. I helped my boss buy his own house. I'm paying for my office manager's daughter's schooling. The person in charge of my concrete crew. When the bank wouldn't provide him a loan for his business, I signed it with him. Patricia's grandmother was wiping her eyes with a tissue. We messed up, Derek. Errors? I laughed once. Short grandmother. You told people you were embarrassed that your grandson worked with his hands like a regular worker. Monica informed her neighbors that I was the family's failure who would never get anywhere. Jake didn't even ask me to come to his first wedding. I took my phone out again. Do you want to hear about mistakes? Let me show you what you actually lost. I looked through my pictures and found the ones I wanted. Last year, I gave money to help develop this wing of the Children's Hospital. It's named after our great-grandfather, who worked in construction all his life to support his family. They turned pale when they realized what it meant. This is the scholarship fund I set up at the community college every year for kids who want to learn trades instead of going to four-year schools and getting into debt. And this, I showed them another picture, is the shelter I helped build and furnish. I gave all the labor and supplies. I was really proud of the hospital wing. The children's wing had been using an old basement for years, and the lighting and equipment were not up to date. My donation helped pay for a full refurbishment that made the place more kid-friendly, added natural light, and made room for families to remain while their loved ones were getting treatment. The scholarship money was also personal. Every year, I picked students who wanted to learn trades but didn't have the money for the tools and supplies. The grant paid for everything, including tuition, books, tools, work boots, and safety gear. Some of the people who got gifts from me now worked full-time for my company. Now Aunt Monica was crying. We didn't know, Derek. You didn't know since you didn't inquire. You were too busy staring down on me to see what I was really doing. I placed my phone down and looked at each of them in order. But here's the thing. I didn't do those things to get attention or to show you something. I did them because it was the correct thing to do. The time of truth. Brandon, who had been quiet, finally said something. Is there any way we can fix this, Derek? I realize we made a mistake, but family should mean something. I looked at his face for a long time. He appeared to really get how big what they had done was out of all of them. Brandon, family is important. It is being there for each other no matter what. It means being happy for each other's successes without becoming jealous. It is being there for each other when the world attempts to bring you down. I stopped and let that soak in. When did any of you do it for me? He couldn't say since the answer was never. Do you want to know what family means to me now? I took 6 of my workers and 4 trucks to help with the cleanup and repairs after the floods ravaged East Texas last month. For 2 weeks, we worked for free to help people repair damaged homes. Those people are now my family. We have each other's backs because we want to, not because we are related. The job to help people after the flood was hard but worth it. We worked long hours cleaning up trash, covering roofs with tarps, and helping families save what they could from homes that had been flooded. My crew worked for free, and I paid for everything. Food, petrol, tools, and hotel rooms. We assisted more than 50 families get back on their feet. I stepped to the front door and opened it all the way. That's how a family looks. Get out of my house right now. Jake paused and glanced back as they walked by me to the door. Each one looked defeated and ashamed. I know I don't deserve it, Derek, but if you ever change your mind about giving us another chance. I stared at my brother. Really stared at him. The golden child who had everything given to him but wasted it by making bad choices and picking bad relationships. The man who let his family treat me like nothing for 10 years. Jake, do you want another chance? This is what it looks like. You sort things out on your own without asking anyone for aid. You show that you can take care of yourself. Most importantly, you learn to treat others with respect instead of seeing them as either useful or disposable. He nodded slowly, his eyes watering. If I do all of that, we might be able to talk about being brothers. But not before that. I stood in my doorway and watched their taillights go down my private road as they drove away. I was fully free of their expectations and judgments for the first time in 10 years. A text from my boss made my phone vibrate. Hey boss, there's a poker game tonight. You in? I laughed and typed back, of course. Family dinner, right? You know it, boss. Then I secured the door and went back to my garage, where the Chvel was waiting. Some things are worth bringing back, while some things are better off staying in the past. After 10 years, I finally got the